Welcome to the Business Leadership Series, where we engage with leaders who are making an impact on their worlds and who want to share their knowledge and experience for your personal and professional growth. The following interview is designed to inspire you to become the best leader you can be. Your host, Derek Champagne, is the founder and CEO of The Artist Evolution, a full-service agency building successful brands, marketing tools, and campaigns, and also the author of the best-selling book, Don't Buy a Duck. And now, let's begin today's Leadership Series interview.
Welcome to the Business Leadership Series, where our goal is to inspire you to become the best leader that you can be. I've got an awesome dude with us today, Dan Kuschell. He is a husband, a dad, a serial entrepreneur, founder and CEO of Breakthrough 3X. Helps businesses get unstuck, connect the dots, see the blind spots. These are all things we talk about a lot on our show, about needing to do those things, creating a steady flow of leads, sales, and profits so you can have a bigger impact, reach, and contribution. His track record, more than 25 years of experience, has started over 11 companies, bought and sold multiple companies, has helped over 5,000 business owners and entrepreneurs in over 180 industries in 11 countries from around the world. He also has a podcast, Growth of Freedom, which I recommend you check out. It's recommended by Forbes. He's been seen on all kinds of platforms, ESPN, NBC, Thrive, Huffington Post, and more. So, hey, best-selling author too. Bootstrap Business, a champion in the making. Awaken, the champion within your life, business and relationships, and more. Dan, I'm out of breath with all your accomplishments, but I'm glad to have you with us today.
Derek, it's a pleasure to be with you, man. Thank you.
Hey, we always like to get to know our listeners better. So you talk about being a husband and dad. I love that you put that first. That's awesome. That shows the balance that you're trying to achieve and stay within and where your identity is. So just give us some background about you as a person, how you grew up, kind of what made you who you are today.
Well, I think that the simple version, Derek, is, I grew up in the inner city of Detroit, and, I thought for me, sports was actually going to be the way out. I thought it was going to be the answer, and it didn't quite work out for a variety of reasons. Probably mostly I just didn't have the dang talent. But I had a lot of fun. I played 4 years of college ball. I played semi-pro ball. I coached a college summer all-star team, which was a blast. And while I was in school, my sister got me a role in a position with a direct response marketing company all the way back in the late 80s, right? So this goes back a minute, right?
Right.
And, well, I was in this company, and at the time it was pre-internet, However, we were creating campaigns, and these were direct response campaigns where you put out an ad on TV, or you put out an ad on radio, or you put out a direct mail piece, and then people would respond and buy stuff. And I have to admit, I got so fascinated, Derek, by human psychology that I just went deeper and deeper and deeper. So when I wasn't playing ball, I was studying. I started studying people like Brian Tracy and Tom Hopkins and Tony Robbins, attending events. I mean, I just became a mad consumer to want to master this stuff, partially because, they say we do what we teach, right? In a lot of cases. And for me, I also grew up, I was outside of the sports field. I was very self-conscious. I was awkward. I had this weird, I didn't feel like I fit in, frankly. I was very just socially, just awkward. And so for me, it was like a way to learn how to be more confident and more certain, all these different, characteristics, almost like how I would be on the sports field, right? And then in 1992, I was in my last year of school, and, I was like, well, what am I going to do after this? And baseball, I realized wasn't working out. So I was like, well, why don't I go start a company? I can do what I've been doing for multiple years now, and I can do it better. And so I did. And I went out and started my very first company all the way back in 1992. And it's been a blast. I've 11 companies. I think thankfully in sports, like baseball, for example, you learn to fail.
Yep.
Right? Your way to success, right? Because in baseball, if you are successful just 3 out of 10 times, they consider you world class. Well, in business, I've kind of been that way. So you brought up the 11 companies. I have crashed 3 companies. I buried them in the backyard. I've had a handful of, successes, relative. It's all relative, as you know. I think my biggest success I was very blessed and fortunate to build a couple companies. I bought companies, sold companies, but I sold 2 companies, and then really got a chance, Derek, to focus on my health. I've since lost about 85 pounds.
Wow.
I've been far more present the last decade with my kids. I'm right now, in the process of building our businesses, that we continue to work with some amazing clients. We have equity in these many companies. I get to be a semi-full-time football coach for my son, who's 12. Great. And I get to experience, that freedom and that joy to be with him and his team 4 days a week. And, it's just a lot of fun. I love growing things. I think if, someone said, what's one word to describe it, would be optimize. I like optimizing business, company, people, and a lot more. So that's where we're at today.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your story. I appreciate it. I've had 9 companies, and my track record is a little different. I love sharing it. You've got the 11. Yes, success is relative. Failure is learning. But and we won't stay on it. But let's talk about it for a minute, because it's always fascinating to me, and I think I'm one of the case studies. But I'm always still learning. Of course, we all are. But is how somebody can talk through some big events in their life and just breeze through it in a couple sentences, right?
Yes.
But when you go back to it and you live, sometimes you're on a mountain. Other times you're literally walking through the embers of a plane crash, and looking around and going, wow. And it's dark and deep. And not everybody goes to that level. Entrepreneurs, we all do in different ways in our life, but entrepreneurs that have serial experience in multiple companies have done it many times. So for someone looking from the outside, or from someone who's just kind of starting into that role, take me into some smaller moments. Like, what's it like, and do you get better at it when you're going through kind of the wreckage, or things aren't what you thought they'd be? And what do you do? What are those small moments like? Because I think our character and our growth is made in those small moments, in consistency, and what we learn from those.
Yes, and I think the best way, Derek, that I can probably describe and paint a picture is just share a quick story.
Please.
Right, that is huge and small at the same time. And for someone new, if you're listening right now, or you're watching right now, and if you can tune into this and not make the mistake I did, it will transform the way you build anything in the future. Build a life, build a marriage, build being a parent, and also building being a business owner, entrepreneur, a founder, creator, all those sorts of things. So I was a couple decades into building my businesses, and I had a couple that were really thriving. We had grown it to almost 200 employees. So wow. If you're listening or watching, just imagine it. You build basically your dream world in a lot of ways.
Right.
And you build up to 200 employees. You're doing millions a month in business, and you have a very good culture. Things are going really solid. And you have a 2-year-old daughter at the time, and you have a son who's just born. And you wake up one morning, and you have some chest pain. And, what would you do? So for me, what I did in that moment, Derek, is I picked up the phone, I called my doctor, and I said, hey, I'm having some chest pain right now and short of breath. And he said, well, how serious is it? And I said, well, I feel like I'm okay. He goes, well, precautionary, can you get yourself to the hospital? And so long and the short, I end up, going to the hospital a few minutes away. I walk in, and I, of course, don't tell the medical staff I'm having chest pains, because that creates a lot of chaos.
Right.
So I downplay it, and I go, hey, I'm having some chest tightness, a little short of breath, and I was in my 30s, by the way. Right. And I sat down, and you can walk into an emergency room. I half expected I was going to be there 2.5 hours, because there was a full room of people. I mean, it was wall to wall when I walked in that morning. And they say, go sit over there. We'll have someone with you shortly. And I was like, okay, it's going to be like 2.5 hours. I'll chill out. Next thing I know, 3 minutes later, somebody walks over, and she rolls a chair up. She puts the cuff on. She puts the stethoscope on, starts doing some stuff. And she goes, okay, follow me. 30 seconds later, she walks me around into a room, and they get me on a gurney. Next thing you know, from my perspective, all hell breaks loose. They start putting diodes all over my body. They start doing all kinds of tests. Long and the short, I end up there in the hospital for 4 days and nights. On the third night, they let me know they want to do a heart procedure, process, and I have to sign a disclaimer with this surgery that says I have a 1 in X chance of dying on the table. Now, as you're listening right now, imagine this, right? Your business, your life, your kids, what would you do? And how would you respond? And for me, Derek, it was like an incredible wake-up call.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, I cried through half the night writing pieces of, adding to like my will, because I wasn't sure. I was uncertain. I was scared. I was, just very uncomfortable. They talk about the stages of Dabdar from a book called Kubler-Ross, Death and Dying, which is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, yes. Anxiety, and then ultimately response. I think I went through all of those stages in a matter of 3-4 hours through the night. And it was very anxious, to say the least. And I remember, a come to Jesus, conversation with myself, just let me come out of this. I'm going to make some shifts, because I started recognizing in the evening, like what I had, I needed to make some changes. And I came out of that. And I've always invested, like one of the biggest things I learned early on in my 20s was invest in yourself, get a coach, get a mentor. And if you're in Derek's community and you haven't gotten a chance to connect to Derek and his world yet, connect to him, find a way, because one conversation, one chance conversation, one meeting for an hour can change your life, can change your business. And I know Derek's got the goods and the tools and the wisdom to help anybody that wants to grow a business. And a whole platform of people who, if he's not the perfect fit, he can get you connected. Yeah. So I came out of that and I was like, I got to get another coach who can help me specialize in this and get real clarity. And I hired a coach. Her name is Christy Lopez. And we started work together. And it was about a 6-month process, partially because even though I had invested up to that point, probably at least $750,000 in my personal development, coaching, consulting, et cetera, I was still missing some things. And as you listen, think about that. Right? Chances are I haven't met very many people who have invested that kind of money who were still not, completely on track. I guess I'm a slow learner, Derek. So like, ideally there's hope for us all. Right. And I hired Christy and she got me to think about 3 questions. I'd love to share this as a gift as you're listening right now, because it changed my world. And when I've shared it, people go, wow, that is amazing. Because it will give you clarity. It will give you confidence. It will give you an ability, by the way, if you use this little 3-question process, there's some other things to add to it, but it'll help you make better selection on who you do business with, who you don't do business with, like who you partner with, who you don't partner, what you say yes to, what you say no, because let's face it, there's a lot of people at different levels. You might be listening right now. You might be a startup in the business. You might be, in your growth phase, your first $1 million to $3 million. You might be in your next 3 to 10. You might be 10 to 100. You might be 100 million plus. All of us are on a journey. These 3 questions will suit you at all these levels straight away. So the first question she got me to think about, Derek, was, what do I want? And that was a really tough question. And I sat in her office for the whole session. She probably introduced it to maybe about a third of the way through the session that we sat down together. So it's a 60-minute at that time, so 40 minutes. I must have sat there. I had one answer on my piece of paper, and I was stumped. Because and what it got me to realize, sitting there in her office, first of all, it was very uncomfortable. I was like sweating because I was like, golly, like, are you an idiot, Dan? Are you like what the hell? Like, you have invested all this time. You've got this mega business that's doing, a couple million a month. You got all these employees who count on your families who count, and you can't identify what you want. And so I was comparing myself, the whole thing, the little angel on our shoulder, like, of confidence, and then the little voice of doubt creeping in there. When that voice of doubt creeps in, I don't know what happens for you, Derek, or as you're listening, what happens for you. But for me, it started pulling me in a place of, just not the best place. And she recognized that, thankfully, and she said, this is kind of normal. This is kind of normal. And she got me to understand this is kind of normal. And she said, I really want you to think for you. Because it was obvious to her, and ultimately, as I got through this, Derek, this process, is that I had for a long time made decisions not really what I wanted, but what I thought others wanted of me. Right? Comparing ourselves to others and being a people pleaser. And I realized that. And I'm still, I have a tendency to be a people pleaser. But when I went ultimately through this, I realized I didn't need or want to have a company of 200 employees, right? I didn't need or want to be working 100 hours a week. And it's easy for me to do that. Like, it's so easy for me to work 100 hours a week because I love just building and creating things. And I realized, on the other side of it, what do I want? I want to be one of those dads that when my kids are 18, 19, 20, and someone say, hey, tell me about your dad. I go, God, my dad kind of made me mad because he was always there. I wanted to be that dad, not the one that, he provided a great life for us, but he was hardly around, right? And so that one question all in and of itself was so powerful. And it took me, by the way, just truth be told, it took me a couple weeks. We had an appointment a few days later. I blew it off. The following week, I blew it off. The later that following week, I blew it off. It was about 2.5 to 3 weeks, Derek, before I had the confidence and also had fleshed out like a lot of my nonsense, a lot of the limiting beliefs, the false belief, those voices of doubt, got them out, and I was able to get real clarity. And then she helped me expand on it. And then she got to the second question, which is, who are you? Not titles, not labels, not, these types of things, not credentialized, almost like the bio I share. I'm grateful you shared that, of course, right? But not that stuff, but the characteristics, the human being of ourselves, not the human doing things, right? And getting the clarity around that. And then the third one is, what do you stand for? We hear companies, mantras, you got to have great core values, right? And I believe in this, right? You got to have core values that are not like 80% values or 90%, but 100% value. You live these, you and your team live these 100% of the time, and usually it starts with the founder. Well, what if we took that same mission to values in a company, and we had that same mission to have values clear personally and at home first?
Yeah,
these are
such great, and I want to explore a little bit more. But first of all, the what do I want? I've seen so many successful business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders who are going 1,000 miles a second in a direction and aren't sure what they want. They can't answer that question. So, but yet they're all consumed. You talk about it. You could work 100 hours. Yeah, it's almost in some ways for our personality types. I'm kind of lumping myself in. It's easier to work 100 hours than it is to stop and focus on your health and go be a great dad and husband with intentionality. It's just easy because that's what we do. We like to build and create. We like to solve challenges. But so don't feel bad if you don't know what you want. But can you imagine putting all your resources and your time and your health and your life in a speedboat in a direction that you're not even sure you want? Can you imagine that? But many of us do that. Many of us. And so one encouragement I have, and actually an accolade to you, Dan, is I'm glad that you did take the time. You said you took a couple of weeks. That was a long time. Yeah, it is to you because you're a doer. You take action. But some people are presented with this and they never figure it out. And what, how to be unintentional with your life. And that's a scary word to me when I woke up one day and realized that I was unintentional in many areas of my life other than work. It scared the heck out of me. How scary is that? But you took action. So I'm glad you did that. So I want that to be an example to us to do that. And then who are you and knowing what your identity is. And I've seen so many business owners, and I've polled some who their happiness when things are going well at work, they tell me they're 10. When they say I'm at a 3 or 4, I'm miserable, it's because they're not doing well at work. So their entire identity is tied to their business and everything is. That's who they are. And so I love that you're bringing these things up. I think they're super important. Your health, just another reminder, I've had a massive health scare myself and it changed my life. I realized that really, honestly, if I don't take care of myself, nothing else matters because I'm not even here to worry about the other things. So I hate that you had that, but also in some ways, I'm kind of thankful you did because I call them speed bumps in life. And my personality type, if I don't have speed bumps, I get in that speed bump and I go as fast as I can, right? Because I want to go build more stuff. The speed bumps remind me I'm a human and remind me to look around at the balance and the other things that matter, and not just chasing and driving after building something. So what do you stand for is so important as well. We've got a couple minutes left. Man, I really appreciate you sharing it from your personal perspective. I can't imagine a better story. I love illustrations and personal examples. I think that's just the best way to learn. it's great to hear theory and read from books, but I love to hear from people's personal experience because it makes it so real and tangible and relatable. Yes. Give us a couple minutes. Talk to us. I mean, you're a sales expert. You're a business growth expert. Give us some highlights. I know that's opening a can of worms because you are such a great thought leader in so many areas. But give us a couple minutes takeaway. I'm seeing what you do with sales and selling more by selling less, and that's gold to me. Talk to me about some sales and business growth strategies in kind of a high level over the next couple minutes, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, Derek, I mean, because you and I, share a lot of affinity, right, with how we view business, right? And, a way to create, a business where, maybe if you're listening right now, maybe you feel like you're sitting on gold, but you're like, golly, I feel like I'm 3 feet from gold, but I just haven't, cashed in yet. Or maybe like you're the best kept secret in your niche or your industry, and you just haven't kind of, gotten to that place, right? And the big problem that we see and that maybe you face, right? First of all, the game to a degree has been rigged against us, especially these days with technology. Technology has been promoted as a way to help us, support us. And it does in a lot of ways, except for people who completely let technology rule them. Think about this, right? You've got, I won't mention names, but you got Big Blue, and then you got the other one, that is the famous search one that most people use. And these big companies they have these algorithms, this AI, if you will, that really is geared to serve them, not you or me in many ways. So the little guy, and when I'm saying little guy, Derek, I refer to companies that are, truly under 50 million are little guys in their scope of, mid-market or larger businesses. And the big problem that we face with this is, tactics are everywhere these days. New tactics are flying up every minute, every day. And as a creative type, if you're a creative type founder or CEO, it's shiny object syndrome. And tactic pops up. So if I were to give like one really powerful piece of advice is discern between tactics, which are timely, and certainly you use them, but don't get used by them. I see so many people, Derek, probably like you, that let technology get in the way and automation, the theory of automation, get in the way of actually making real money in their business.
Yep.
Right? There's nothing more amazing than a strategy like pick up the phone and call somebody, have a conversation, get connected. Don't hide behind email. Don't hide behind some chat bot that is impersonal. Now, you can use those to facilitate faster connections, but strategy or principle-based methods work more than tactics. So fall in love with principle-based concepts. Derek, you have a wealth of principle-based models, methodologies, and trainings available, if not done for you type things, versus just tactical. And so tactical versus principle, really get clear on what you're dealing with when you're dealing with. That's number one. The other side of the coin that I could share to kind of just put a perspective. We've recognized, Derek, there are 6 critical P's in business, right? I've assessed over 4,000 companies in the last handful of years. I've talked to over 1,000 founders of those 4,000 businesses. Companies, from small business who've made it to big companies who've made it. We've assessed companies like Apple and Nike and many others along the way, and we found there's 6 critical P's in those. Now we won't have time to go through all 6 P's. But a way to think about it, like I'm in my hand right now, I like to use some props here and there. And in my hand, you probably, if you're watching or listening, you probably remember the Rubik's Cube, right? The Rubik's Cube is essentially a 3 by 3 by 3 cube, and I've got it in my hands here. And so it's a 3 by 3 by 3 cube. Now, Google supercomputers ran a test on it, and they found that there are over 20 million combinations to solve a Rubik's Cube. 20 million, think about that. As you and I maybe played that as a kid or toyed around with it, maybe we got frustrated, we peeled the stickers off and then put it back on, or we took it apart and we put it together, whatever, or maybe we figured out like 2 or 3 sides and then, shoved it away, whatever, right?
Right.
Those same supercomputers found there are really only 18 to 20 critical moves to solve the puzzle. What if you knew those 18 to 20 critical moves? See, in business, Derek alluded to this earlier in his own way, but there's nothing worse than putting a ladder on the wrong wall and going up it, right? So what are the 18 to 20 moves? And let me even narrow it down to one. Right now, as you're listening right now, you don't need 20 ideas. Yeah, I think Jeff Bezos, Derek, said it best. He says, ideas are one thing, but far more important is execution or implementation.
Right.
So what's the way, as you're listening right now, what's the one thing that you can do, right? One thing. What next one thing that you can do that would have the single greatest impact, multiplier, maximizer, optimizer to you and your business? Chances are it's probably related to some kind of a strategy around your positioning, which is one of the P's in our 6P method. Mm-hmm. It could be around the packaging. It could be around the promoting. It could be around a better process, right? Like, for example, one of our clients that we're working with right now, they had a really good business model, a really good process. We came in and added our methodology, which we call our red zone marketing system. And we took them from, about 100 or so candidates a year to close to 100 a month.
Wow.
And they experienced hockey stick growth because they had, like going back to the Rubik's Cube example, they had one of those critical moves or processes in place that matter. So as you're listening, and there's certainly a whole lot more, Derek, from a strategy point of view we could talk about for sake of time. As you're listening, don't necessarily focus on the idea. What's one needle mover right now, right? What is a domino? See, one domino in the right method, one domino, if you tip it over, tips over 1,000, right? What's the one thing that, if solved, answered, focused on in your business, would be the most productive thing you could do today that would produce 80% of the results, or tip down 100 domino, or the one question solved would answer 12, 15, 100 questions in your business? I'd encourage you, take that. And chances are Derek got access, give you access to resources to help you do that too. So make sure to apply that principle.
I love that. I think it's the great advice, Dan. We obviously being strategic and thinking of the big picture. You're not saying not to do all those things. You have all these formulas, and I want our listeners to be able to engage with you on that. But it does start with picking one thing and tackling that.
Yes.
It's interesting is the timing on that is, I realized this quarter we're doing kind of a franchise expansion model territory. And I went to the top 50 people I know, and I said, I want you to think of me for one thing. This quarter, there's one thing that I need to get accomplished. And so when you think of me, I want you to know, just in your orbit, this is the one thing I need done. And I had 50 people helping me think through that with me, the one thing. And what a game changer that was for people knowing how they could help me. Now, so get that one thing done in your business. Sometimes you can bring others in to help you because they know what your focus is. And it's amazing how people want to come in and help you with that. But so many times I'll ask somebody, I'll say, what can I help you with right now? What's your big thing? What's the thing you need? And they have trouble articulating it. So knowing that helps others help you accomplish it. And people want to. The right people in your network want to help you get that done if it's something that you need help in a complex challenge. So I'll put it out there right now. If you tell me the one thing you're trying to solve right now, if I have the resource in my network, I'll be glad to pass it on. Imagine that. Imagine how we can help each other that way. It's so articulatable. It's amazing. Dan, how do we, go ahead, please.
And as you're listening right now, if you're like a lot of the creative founder CEOs that probably Derek and I both know and run circles with, they have a hard time asking for help. I know I did for a long, long time. And finally, I've gotten better. I wouldn't even say I'm perfect at it today, but I encourage you, get the voice of confidence. When Derek is asking you, when you're in the circle of other successful entrepreneurs and they ask you, what's something you need help with? Don't shy away. Don't coy out. Don't turtle on them. Think of what is that one thing that if you solved it could help you, and ask them. You'd be amazed at how many people really will help you if you just take the time to ask. It's an incredible multiplier strategy.
It really is. Yeah. It's a one of the best kept secrets. You're right. The creative types a lot of times don't want to ask. I get it. I've been there. I still fight around it, but hey, Dan, how can we find out more about you? You have any resources that you can share? I want to make sure that our listeners are able to get in touch with you if it's a good fit for them to learn more about you.
Absolutely. We put together a special business growth toolkit, Derek, for listeners of your show. So if you want to get access to the business growth toolkit around marketing, building a better marketing plan blueprint, a simple one-page concept that gets you and your team on the same page, or you want to have a methodology to train your people, even if they're in customer service, how to sell more by actually selling less. and even take top performers and turn them into super performers. We've got a tool for that. If you want to accelerate your growth as a CEO and founder, your productivity, I put together this checklist. I've been using it for over 10 years myself. Originally, it was just for me. I have it on my wall even today. It helps me run my business and keep, because I'm not a typical traditional CEO, nor do I really want to be. I like to create, I don't like to manage. And so this is built for that type of personality. It's called the CEO's Toolkit. I'm sorry, the CEO's Checklist. And then lastly is the hiring checklist, our 8-step formula, our 9-step hiring checklist to allow you to hire A players all the time, anytime. And to get all these tools, they're absolutely free. All you have to do is enter your name and email address, and you can go get that at elevate.breakthrough3x. That's elevate.breakthrough3x.
Elevate.breakthrough3x. I want to encourage our listeners. Dan has the experience and the tools to save you years, if not decades, of wandering through the desert of figuring these things out. So learn from him, learn from the resources he has. Dan, thank you so much. It's great to talk to you again, and I look forward to watching the next great things that you're doing.
Same here, Derek. Thank you, my friend.
Talk soon.
You've been listening to the Business Leadership Series, where we engage with leaders who are making an impact on their worlds and who want to share their knowledge and experience for your personal and professional growth. This interview was designed to inspire you to become the best leader you can be.